People look at you today, 20 years later, and they still have no idea what you're about. Tell me in a sentence who you are. Nobody.
Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's mukbang, if you are confused as to why I'm eating meat in this mukbang, watch my fondue mukbang where I talk about the fact that I am no longer pescatarian. But that's not what this video is about. So basically what I'm eating for today's mukbang that I'm most excited about is these Cinnabon Biscuits from KFC. They just got released pretty recently, and so I'm going to be trying them for the first time today. And then I'm also going to be trying their new Cheetos chicken sandwich that got released pretty recently as well, I think around the same time. And then I also ordered I think this is the Georgia Gold version of their chicken sandwich. And then I ordered their famous fill-up bowl and a couple pieces of regular chicken. I kind of forgot what exactly I got, but I know that I mixed them half regular and then half extra crispy because I wanted to try both. It's so hot in my apartment right now. I'm like sweating. Anyways, so then that's the food that I'm gonna eat. And then for today's mukbang, I'm going to be talking about the Manson Family murders, which I have so much to talk about. I feel like I'm not going to be able to cover everything. Basically, if you missed my last video, my sister and I went on a tour when we were in LA of the Helter Skelter murder, and so we actually got to see the house that the infamous Tate murders took place. And I'll explain everything in a second if you don't even know what I'm talking about, but basically that's what inspired me to do this video, because I learned so much on the tour that I wanted to do my own research at home. I tried to order a lot of food and it doesn't really look like a lot, so I'm gonna try to like pace my eating with my talking. So if you guys are excited, I don't think I've talked about cults before on my channel, but I've always been really fascinated by them and how the cult leader is able to just control and manipulate so many people. So that's gonna kind of be a large focus of what I'm gonna talk about today, along with what actually happened on the nights of there's two murders I'm gonna talk about that the Manson family committed. But first I'm gonna try the KFC Cinnabon Biscuit, which I've heard is really good, so I'm expecting big things. My mouth is watering, especially because I love cinnamon rolls, if you didn't know that. Like, Cinnabon is amazing, so hopefully this is good too. Wow, that's really good. Especially because I already love their biscuits too. I've had their biscuits before on a cheat day because I like them that much. So taking KFC biscuits and mixing it with my other favorite thing, Cinnabon, is bomb. It's not similar to a cinnamon roll, really. Like, I was expecting more of a cinnamon roll flavor, but I guess it makes sense because I literally just drizzled it in cinnamon frosting, not really like made it any different. So it's still really good. Like, it's just a sweet cinnamony sugar biscuit. And then I also actually got a drink today because I couldn't figure out how to order. I forgot what it was. I think I had to get like a drink and a side for some reason when I ordered it on Grubhub. So I just got a drink. Diet Pepsi. Which is funny, like I get Diet Pepsi when I'm eating all this. So basically I'm going to be talking about my own research and then bringing in some of the stuff that the man who led the tour told us, which I'll put the link in the description if you want to go on the tour. It's really cool. They do a whole bunch of different like famous murders in LA, but I'm going to be mixing some of his commentary with my own research. So some of it I haven't verified online, but I do trust his opinion. Like, his job is to do these tours and like research this stuff. So I have a feeling that he gave us good information. But basically, just to introduce the Manson family really quickly, Charles Manson was a kid from kind of a fucked up home. His mom was a single mom. It's rumored that she tried to sell him once for a pitcher of beer. Well, actually she did apparently sell him for a pitcher of beer, and then his uncle had to go looking for him to take him back home. So he was in and out of jail pretty much his entire life. He committed so many petty crimes that I'm not even going to try to list them, but he was released again in 1967, and in 1967 he went to San Francisco, which was like the height of the hippie era. Summer of 1967 was the summer of love, for example. 1969, when the murders took place, that's when Woodstock happened. So it was just, the 60s were really booming. It was like flower power and love and free yourself and all that kind of stuff. And so Charles went to the center of it, the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco. And while he was there, he basically just kind of created a little family cult for himself. Because hippies were often runaways and people from broken homes, he kind of preyed on them, and well, he did prey on them, and he promised them family, and he promised them love, and he gave them drugs, and according to the women who were in his family, just knew how to make you feel really special. Like, he just had that charisma about him. And as time went on, he accumulated more and more and more and more members. At one point, it was rumored that he had over 100 members in his cult, which is crazy to think about, like 100 people who would follow him and do anything that he said. They were often women, usually really young. He was like 35 this time, and most of the members of his cult were in their late teens or early 20s. And eventually they took a van and kind of drove around for a while, you know, living the hippie lifestyle, and then they ended up in the northern Simi Hills, I think is how you pronounce it, of Los Angeles. And that's basically where things kind of turned really dark and evil. So they stayed at this place called the Spawn Ranch, and the Spawn Ranch was basically just a bunch of little shack ranches, Western style, that were in North LA. And that was when he really started prepping his cult members for murder. So he had always convinced them that he was, like, for example, his name's Manson. He would say that he's the son of man, like he's the second coming of Christ. He would have them all gather around him while he was singing because he wanted to be a musician, and they would sway back and forth kind of creepily, and he would tell them to do that so that it just looked like they were in a trance. He would say things like, "Don't you know who I am?" Like kind of implicating that he was God or something. And so he really had convinced these women and these people that he was something really special. But it wasn't until they moved to the Spawn Ranch that he started to kind of prep them for murder. I'm gonna try something else before I like eat all these right away. I'll wait to try that. I'll try this next. The Georgia Gold. That's what it looks like. I haven't never had a KFC chicken sandwich before. I think the only time that I ever had KFC as a kid was my mom would get like regular chicken biscuits for sure. I would eat a lot of the biscuits, and then I think like mashed potatoes maybe. It wasn't ever like sandwiches or anything, but this looks good. That is good. Oh, some lipstick on my chin. Let me fix this really quickly. Red probably wasn't the best color lipstick to wear, but it matched my shirt, so that's why I chose it. This reminds me a lot of a McChicken, which Used to be my favorite sandwich as a kid from McDonald's. So yeah, basically when they moved to the Spawn Ranch, they started participating in things like creepy crawlies, they would call them, where they would dress in all black and go into people's homes and basically just turn over their furniture and eat some food, and kind of, it had nothing to do with hurting these people, but Charles Manson just loved the idea of like fucking with their minds. Like, you wake up and your kitchen table is overturned, and so you know someone was in your house, you just don't know who it was. And so they used to do stuff like that because they were on drugs all day. He would just feed them these lies. And so the whole motive, I guess you could say, behind the murders is helter-skelter. And so at the Spawn Ranch, he started convincing his family members, the Manson family, that there was going to be a revolution, and then there was going to be a race war between blacks and whites. And get this, guys. Okay, so if you didn't know this, there's a song from the Beatles called Helter Skelter. So he was a fan of Revelation 9, and he thought that the 4 angels that were mentioned in Revelation 9 were the 4 Beatles. He also thought that they were talking to him through their music. And that's dead ass, literally. Like, he would listen to the Beatles music. You can go online and literally Google like Beatles lyrics, Charles Manson interpretation, or something like that. It will say the lyric, and then it'll say what Manson thought it meant. So I wrote one down in my notes, for example. And so there's a song from the Beatles called Revolution 1, and the lyrics go, "You say you want a revolution, well, you know we all want to change the world. You tell me that it's evolution, well, you know we all want to change the world. But when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out?" And I guess Charles Manson thought that they said count me in, and they actually said count me out. And they say, all right, you say you got a real solution, well, you know we'd love to see the plan. So Manson thought that from these lyrics, the Beatles favored a revolution, and that Manson should now reveal his plan to escape the upcoming chaos. What he thought was going to happen was that there was going to be a race war between blacks and whites, like I said. He called them blackies and whiteys, and he thought that African Americans would eventually prevail the race war, and then they would apparently not be able to govern themselves. And Manson and his family were going to hide out in this cave in Death Valley, basically just keep reproducing, because the Manson family all slept with each other. If you didn't know that, it was basically like they had group sex and took LSD and just experimented with free love. And so his plan was that they would all reproduce in Death Valley, grow large in number, and then the blackies would turn to them when they weren't able to govern themselves, and then Manson would rule the United States. That was literally his plan. Eventually what happened was he could see that the race war wasn't starting. There was no implication that a revolution was going to happen, so that's why he murdered these people, was to basically spur the race war. This tastes exactly like a McChicken. At least the kind I used to get. I don't know if they taste different now. The kind I used to get when I was younger, this tastes exactly like it. Sarah, I know you're watching this. She's gonna be laughing because she knows my love for McChickens. I think they used to call them Cajun McChickens. She knows my love for them. She thinks it's silly, but I used to really love them. And so basically, eventually, when Manson could tell that the race war wasn't going to happen without his help, he decided that murdering wealthy white people, wealthy and famous white people, would scare white people into thinking that African Americans were doing it, because he was going to leave the wallets of the deceased in highly populated African American areas in LA. So he was basically trying to pit the two races against each other, and then hope that a war happened, and then they would stay in Death Valley and survive the war, and then somehow govern the United States. Yum. I love mashed potatoes. This is really good. It tastes exactly like you would imagine it. So the actual most famous murders that the Manson family are responsible for took place on August 9th and August 10th. And the first murder took place at a home that Sharon Tate, who was a famous actress, she was supposed to be like the next Marilyn Monroe, and she was married to a famous director named Roman Polanski, and they were leasing this home on 10050 Cielo Drive, which is where the murder took place. And Sharon was pregnant at the time. Roman was in Europe. I think he was directing a movie actually at the time, but she was 8 months pregnant at the time, very, very pregnant. And she had a couple friends over. One was Jay Sebring, one was Abigail Folger, who was the heiress to the Folger coffee fortune, and then Abigail Folger's lover, his last name is Wojciechowski or something like that. It was a foreign name, so I don't remember it exactly, but basically there was all four of them in Tate's house on the night of August 9th. There was rumors that there was supposed to be a party, but they were all in bed in their pajamas, like there was no party going on, and that was when basically the Manson family showed up and murdered them all. So I'm gonna try one of the, I think this is a drumstick, I don't know, I think it's extra crispy. I think I ordered this one extra crispy. Okay, so my camera stopped recording, but I'm gonna try honey on this because I heard that honey is good on fried chicken, and I like honey, so it makes sense. It just makes it kind of sweeter. And so on the night of August 9th, Charles Manson told Tex Watson, which Tex was basically Charles' right-hand man. He was still younger than Charles, but he was older than the rest of the girls. And so he was kind of like the leader, the ringleader of the group. So he told Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel to enter the Tate home. And the crazy thing about Manson is that he's never murdered anyone officially. He's never been charged or caught actually committing a murder. He's technically responsible for these murders, but he didn't actually commit them. Nor was he even at the house the night that the Tate murders took place. The crazy thing too is that he never actually told his family members to murder anyone. It was definitely well understood that that's what he wanted, the way he would say things and kind of how he had prepped them. Like, I guess he had shown them the most efficient way to stab someone, for example. So it was definitely very clear that that's what he wanted, but he never told anyone to murder anyone. He would say things like, leave something witchy behind, or you know what to do, and that kind of stuff. Very ambiguous, but also very obvious what he wanted. That's still his whole defense, or I mean, he's dead now. He died in 2017, but he used to say that up to the day that he died. He would say, I didn't tell anyone to do anything.
I don't understand you either, but I don't spend my whole life trying to put the blame over on you because my cigarette didn't light, or because something didn't work right. What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone.
Like, he still has never taken responsibility for the involvement or shown any remorse at all for the murders. Basically, he never told anyone to murder anyone. Before I knew about the case, I always assumed that he was at the house when the murders took place. Like, I just assumed that he would have been there, you know? But he wasn't. It's been so long since I've done a fast food mukbang. So I think my last one probably was like Burger King, and that was like forever ago. So Tex Watson and the three other girls drove up to the Tate residence, which Charles Manson had told them specifically that's where he wanted them to go. And Random weird little fact, Charles Manson had actually already been in that home before. Like I said, he was an aspiring musician, and he actually had become friends with Dennis of the Beach Boys, and Dennis had introduced him to this record producer named Terry Mulcher. And Terry Mulcher had at first expressed interest in signing Charles, I think just to be nice. I think it was one of those things where it's like he was friends with Dennis from the Beach Boys, and Dennis for some reason liked Charles Manson, and Terry was like, yeah, I guess I can listen to his music, maybe. But he never actually like did anything with it. So Charles was basically mad that Terry had ghosted him, the 1969 version of ghosting, and he went up to Terry's old house to try to talk to him and see what was going on, like why he hadn't been signed, why Terry hadn't reached out. And when he got there, he was told that it was no longer Terry's home, but the Tate residence, and he was basically told to leave. But the fact that he had already been there and knew that Terry Mulcher didn't live there anymore, so he couldn't have been trying to target Terry Mulcher. It's weird that he picked that house. Like, why? Did he see Sharon while he was there? Did he talk to her? Like, did something happen? It's a mystery, but it's weird that he was there before and then specifically directed the Manson family to go to that house and murder everyone inside. So anyways, when the Manson family got there, they were immediately met by someone who had been visiting the gardener in the guest house. He was an 18-year-old, I think his name was Stephen Parent, and he was just exiting the premises, trying to go home, and Tex Watson, the ringleader, like I said, just walked up to his car and shot him 4 times, just totally mercilessly. And they all entered the home and basically caused chaos, like the most chaotic, gruesome murder scene you can imagine. And that's also a big reason why these two specific cases I'm talking about, were so famous, is because it's 1969. Like, prior to that, I can't think of a murder that was more gruesome than this. I don't even know if I can think of one now. Like, there's very famous murders. The victims were stabbed so many times. They were basically hunted. So they were all tied up, basically. Frykowski ended up getting away, but they hunted him down, stabbed him in the leg, stabbed him in the stomach, hit him over the head with a revolver. They hit him so hard that the grip on the revolver broke off. They killed Sharon Tate. She was 8 months pregnant. The person who actually killed her is Susan Atkins. According to Susan Atkins at trial, Sharon begged for her life and her baby's life and said, the only thing that I want is to have my child. Like, please just spare me, and then I'll have my child, and then you can kill me. And Susan Atkins, being a mother herself, Susan Atkins was literally a mother. She had a son. She said, I have no mercy for you, bitch. And then she killed her. Susan Atkins said that she tasted Sharon Tate's blood and it gave her an orgasm. She then also wrote pig on the wall in Sharon Tate's blood. I understand that these people were on drugs. These women were on drugs. They were manipulated by this person, Charles Manson. I understand all that, but I also don't understand how you can murder a pregnant woman or just innocent people so gruesomely and just have no mercy about it. Like, during the trial, they would sing in the hallway. It blows my mind, and it blows everyone's mind, and that's why the cases are so famous. I'm just gonna read you guys some facts about the crime scene because I don't remember all the facts exactly. Frykowski, the one who had gotten away, and then they chased him onto the lawn. He had been stabbed 51 times. Folger, Abigail Folger, the heiress to the coffee company, had been stabbed 28 times. Sebring, who was a hairdresser, he had been stabbed 7 times. Tate was stabbed a total of 16. So these people were dead long before. Like, for example, Frykowski, there's no way he died on the 51st stab wound. Like, they were stabbing him post-mortem. I can't even fathom that. Like, I understand that you're manipulated by this cult leader, but I can't imagine being able to do that, you know? Linda Kasabian was the getaway driver, so she was actually granted immunity because she never actually killed anybody. She was granted immunity for her testimony. So after the murders were done, they all drove back to the ranch. And it was kind of surreal because during the tour, we actually took the exact route that all four of them took on their way back to the ranch. And because they changed out of their bloody clothes, he showed us the exact spot where they threw their clothes over like the side rail on the road. He showed us the exact spot and the exact house that the gun was found, the murder weapon, the one that they hit Frykowski over the head with that broke off the grip. Because when they threw the gun, it looked like they were throwing it into a forest, but in reality it just dipped down into someone's yard. But anyways, they got back to the ranch, and I guess Charles was upset with the murder. He called it sloppy. And so the next night he planned another murder. And so because Charles was basically unhappy with the way the first murder had gone down, he wanted to tag along for the second one. And all the same members took part in it. So Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, and Patricia Krenwinkel. And then he added another member, Leslie Van Houten, who participated in the murder as well. They drove around looking for, I guess, people to murder. And eventually they came into a neighborhood that they had attended a party at the year prior. Literally, the party they had attended the year prior, the house next door is the house that they decided to murder people in. And that house belonged to Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. So they were the technical 6th and 7th victims of the Manson family. So it's rumored that because Manson was familiar with the neighborhood and the LaBiancas had reported break-ins where nothing was stolen, the LaBiancas might have been a victim, I guess you could say, of Manson's creepy crawlies where they would go into people's homes and overturn their furniture and stuff. So if that's true, it's extra freaky that he went back. Like, he already had messed with them enough and then he's going back to murder them. So like I said, Manson wasn't involved in any of the murders, so as soon as they got there, he and Tex Watson tied up Rosemary and Lino, and then Manson left. And so he, once again, wasn't there for the murders to take place. He just gave Tex orders. Before he left, he promised Rosemary and Lino that they weren't going to be hurt and they were just being robbed. So he lied to them and didn't care at all that they were about to be literally terrorized. Once again, I don't remember the exact facts of the murder, so I'll just really quickly read them off. They stabbed Rosemary a total of 41 times and Lino 26. They also carved the word war with a knife in Lino's stomach and then left a carving fork sticking out of his stomach, so they stabbed it and just left it there. They wrote the words "death to pigs" and "rise" using Lino's blood on the walls of the living room. Once again, using Lino's blood, they wrote "Helter Skelter" on the refrigerator door. Once again, just like a crazy, gruesome crime scene. So the bodies of the Tate had been just literally discovered that morning. And then the next morning, the son of Rosemary from a different marriage, I think he was just coming over to visit or something, and he saw that Lino's boat was still in the driveway. So he was super suspicious, like, why is his boat still outside? Usually he's like one of those people that cares so much about his boat that he would just never leave it outside. And so he immediately became suspicious and contacted his sister, and his sister and her boyfriend showed up. And the only reason why I'm telling this, it's not really important to the technical story of it, but the man who provided the tour for us believes that the sister, her name was also Susan, he thinks that she was somehow involved in having her parents set up to be killed by Manson, which I'll get into after I bite this. And he basically thinks that because she was around the same age as the women. In the 60s, like, it wasn't like Manson and his family weren't accepted by other people. The 60s was kind of just like the LSD party era, especially in LA. You think of him as being really crazy and creepy now, but in the 60s, he was just another hippie. And so the driver of the tour thinks that Susan, the daughter of Rosemary and Leno, probably knew these people. It was a small community. She hung out with those same kind of people. At least Tex Watson, like I said, was Manson's right-hand man. So like I said, we took the exact path. They show you all the important landmarks. And so they showed us the apartment that Susan, Rosemary LaBianca's daughter, lived at. And it was a minute down the street from Tex Watson's apartment, or Tex Watson's former apartment. Susan also attended Tex Watson's parole hearings and tried to basically say that he should be paroled and that she forgives him. She didn't go to Susan Atkins' parole. She didn't go to Leslie Van Houten's parole, but she went to Tex Watson's parole, especially since she was the first person to try to claim inheritance from her parents after they died. I think she tried like the week following. So I'm not saying she for sure set them up, but that's what the driver of the tour believes. So just an interesting little fact there. So the Manson family wasn't arrested for a long time after the murders. It took the police several months to tie it to them and figure out who it was. So now I'm going to try the Cheetos sandwich, which I've also heard is really good, so I'm really excited. Mmm. That's so freaking good. Their Cheeto sauce, or the sauce on here, tastes so Cheeto-y. So like I was worried that you wouldn't really be able to taste the Cheetos, but you can taste them. Wow. Yeah, I would say these are like 7.5 out of 10, maybe an 8. This is a 9. So, like I said, the murders took forever to get solved. The police really messed up because the police who were in charge of the Tate murders were a lot younger, and then the police who were assigned to the LaBianca case were older and more seasoned detectives. And the Tate detectives immediately reached out to the LaBianca detectives and said, hey, there's some similarities here. The stabs, the words on the wall, just like the overall gruesome, like satanic nature to it. But the LaBianca detectives were like, who are these young guys coming through, like trying to tell us how to solve our case? And so they just dismissed it. And really the only reason why it was solved is because the Manson family continued to be involved in illegal activities. They moved from Spawn Ranch to Death Valley, and in Death Valley they just started burning down stuff. I'm not really sure what they were doing. Police obviously got notified, and because of them burning stuff, the police raided their ranch, found a bunch of stolen vehicles, and then were able to basically arrest them. So Manson and Atkins were two who were arrested at the ranch when the raids happened. These might be more than a 7.5. They're for sure an 8. When the family was arrested in Death Valley, that's when the case really started coming together. So fucking Susan Atkins, stupid Susan, no, I'm just kidding. She decides that she's gonna blab to her cellmate. Her cellmate's name was Virginia Graham. So she blabs to Virginia about everything that they did at the Tate home. And obviously Virginia knew of the murders. The murders were infamous already, because before that, everyone's door was kind of open. After the murders took place, people really started to fear. Like, that had never happened before, where people were just killed so brutally in their own home. So you didn't even feel safe in your own home anymore. Susan starts telling her, hey, I'm the one who did it. It gets around the jail. It eventually gets back to the LAPD, but it also gets to the LA Times. So the LA Times literally publishes Susan Atkins' full confession on the front page without her even being officially arrested for the crime yet. So it was super embarrassing for the LAPD. But the story also provided another break for the LAPD, because even though it technically made them look dumb, they were about to feel even more stupid, because they actually had the murder weapon in their possession already, because months prior, a boy who was playing in his yard found a gun with a broken grip on it. And so he turns it into his dad, and his dad turns it into the police, obviously. Like, you just find a random gun in your backyard, it just kind of seems sketchy. So the police never made the connection that that could possibly be the murder weapon, even though it was less than a mile down the road. So the dad who turned in the gun is reading the paper, and he's reading about Susan Atkins' confession, and he's reading about the broken grip on the gun. And he calls LAPD again and is like, hey, I think that could be the gun that I turned in. So eventually they find it in evidence. The police eventually also connected the LaBianca murders to the Manson family, because they got information from this biker gang that Manson had been bragging about killing an older couple. The trial took 9 months total, 227 days, I think, or that's how long the jury was sequestered for. The trial was super long, super dramatic, drawn out by Charles Manson himself. He originally wanted to actually try to be his own lawyer and represent himself, and eventually that right was revoked because he had a couple misconducts. Basically, the judge was like, okay, we're not going to let you represent yourself anymore. And so, in protest to that, Charles Manson carved an X on his forehead. There was members of the family, obviously, who weren't arrested, who they all shaved their heads in protest and would wait outside the courthouse. Manson also is probably responsible for murdering or attempting to murder many witnesses against him. So the defense attorney for Leslie Van Houten, his name is Ronald Hughes, and he just didn't show up to court one morning because he went on a long weekend camping trip with his family and just disappeared. And so it's commonly believed that Manson, because he was able to control these people and still convince them to kill for him, it's believed that Manson ordered his death because the defense attorney was trying to prove that Leslie was totally under Manson's control and wasn't able to think for herself. There was another woman, Barbara Hoyt, who had been a Manson family member but was actually testifying against Manson and basically testifying to what happened at the ranch and what life was like and how Manson kind of controlled them. And she was lured to Hawaii by another Manson family member, and while she was in Hawaii, the Manson family member bought her a hamburger, laced it with a lethal dose of LSD, and then left her to die. Thankfully, she didn't die. She was able to get to a hospital, but it was once again a hit ordered by Manson while he was basically in prison. Like, he was in the LA County jail. Just insane. It took the jury a full week to deliberate, and they came back, and basically all of the members who were involved were given death sentences, but which was then commuted to life in prison because in 1972 California basically outlawed the death penalty. So everyone's alive still besides Manson and Susan Atkins. Linda Van Houten was recently just denied parole, or she was granted parole and then I believe it was denied by the governor. And Tex Watson is also still in prison and trying to get parole but hasn't. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I did leave out kind of like some information, but nothing that's really that important. It was more just like little side things I was going to talk about if I had time, but I'm full and I'm almost done with my food anyways. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the KFC. I really liked it. I will be back to making myself food for my next mukbang, but I really wanted to try those two things, so I figured I would just have KFC for a mukbang. But yes, anyways, I will just talk to you in my next video.